So, Invincible Season 4's bringing one of the craziest villains of all time. From his dark origins to his eventual downfall, here's the full story of Thragg, the ultimate Viltrumite. Thragg's the Grand Regent of the Viltrum Empire, and he's the standard every other Viltrumite gets measured against. He isn't treated like an ordinary leader, or even a typical legend. Thragg's known as the strongest Viltrumite to ever live. Someone who can break elite fighters with a casual strike and make hardened killers tense the moment he arrives. His strength always comes with a purpose. Thragg believes he's the only person capable of keeping his people alive, and he's willing to justify almost anything if it protects the Empire. His story starts thousands of years before Mark Grayson becomes invincible. He's born on Viltrum as the son of one of Emperor Argyll's closest advisors. From early on, he's shaped by the belief that Viltrum can't survive through kindness, hesitation, or compromise, only through raw strength. He's trained in combat without limits, and bred to become the most powerful of all time. That's why he doesn't fight like a talented warrior. He fights like someone built for one job: to end conflicts through force whenever the Empire decides force is the answer. Everything shifts when Argyll is assassinated by Thetis. Viltrum doesn't go through a calm transition of power in the wake of this event. Instead, the planet fractures into chaos, and that destruction becomes part of Viltrum identity. Argyll's heirs exist, but they're hidden and anonymous, because the Empire has too many enemies for them to stay safe. In the turmoil after the assassination, the heirs are lost, and the planet turns inward for leadership. A brutal era follows this, where Viltrumites push their philosophy to an extreme, hunting weakness and letting violence decide who's allowed to survive and thrive. After centuries of internal brutality and pain, the Viltrumites emerge as an almost unstoppable warrior race, and Thragg stands at the center of it all. Their greatest warrior. He's granted the title of Grand Regent, with the official responsibility of finding Argyll's true heir, but the real role is holding the Empire together at any cost necessary. Argyll's skull stays close, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of what happens when control slips and the Empire breaks apart. It serves to warn Thragg and all those in his command that failure to follow his brutish orders can lead to utter destruction. Then, the Scourge virus hits, and everything shifts again. The virus devastates the Viltrumite population, leaving their numbers dangerously reduced after shredding their majority. Thragg assumes the heir must have died during that disaster, and eventually, he stops searching. From that point on, he sees his position as earned and fated. He survived the collapse, held the remaining Viltrumites together, and kept the Empire from splintering completely. He doesn't view himself as a temporary replacement anymore. He sees himself as the ruler his people need, and any threat to his authority becomes a threat to the survival of the Empire itself. When Thragg enters the Invincible timeline, it happens through a mix of failure and fear. Conquest, one of the most terrifying Viltrumite agents, fails to kill Mark. Instead of returning with victory, Conquest comes back begging for forgiveness. Thragg doesn't react to this situation with sympathy or patience. He reacts with the brutal efficiency which brought him so far. Rather than seeing a life pleading for itself, he sees a weapon is losing its only value. Conquest gets spared only because he might still be useful at some point, and then Thragg turns the failure into new orders, sending more Viltrumites to eliminate Invincible and anyone protecting him. As the wider war builds, Thragg's planning becomes clearer. He maintains a spy within the coalition of planets, using that advantage to weaken defenses and create openings. He also carries personal hatred beneath his strategy, especially toward Thetis. Thragg speaks to Argyll's skull and phrases his campaign as revenge and restoration. For him, the Empire isn't only a political system, it's a legacy that was stolen, humiliated, and forced into decline. When the coalition confronts Viltrum directly, Thragg leads the charge, and the gap between him and everyone else becomes painfully obvious. Mark attacks him, and it barely even registers. Thragg hits back, and it feels less like a fight, and more like disciplining a child. Oliver steps in, and Thragg overwhelms him with terrifying efficiency. The message lands fast. Courage and skill won't save anyone from Thragg, and even other Viltrumites treat him with visible fear and panic. The Viltrumite War escalates into a complete catastrophe when Viltrum itself is destroyed, making things desperate for Thragg. His reaction is overwhelming grief, which he turns into pure rage. He sees it as the destruction of heritage, history, and identity, and he blames Thetis for it. When Thetis offers surrender and apology, Thragg rejects it without a second thought. He kills him and declares Argal finally avenged. At that moment, Thragg isn't just leading troops into battle, he's enforcing the core ideas of pride, strength, and punishment, with no room for mercy or messing up. After that disaster, the conflict doesn't settle into peace and quiet just because Thragg loses his forces and planet. The story shifts into negotiation under deadly threats. Thragg confronts Mark and Nolan and offers surrender, but it comes with a condition that makes things sound insane. He demands Earth, but he presents the takeover as controlled and strategic. Viltrumites will blend among humans and interbreed, rebuilding their population quietly, while avoiding open rule and limiting interference with daily life. With their numbers so low, brute force alone won't keep the Empire alive. So Thragg pivots to a long-term plan that preserves Viltrumite dominance through bloodlines. Mark resists, but pressure forces acceptance because the alternative is endless war and more deaths. Thragg even thanks them for ensuring Viltrumite survival, sounding almost reasonable for a moment, even though the plan is still domination. That uneasy balance collapses when the truth about Argal's bloodline returns. Thragg clashes with Alan and Oliver over the Scourge virus and shows just how sharp his instincts are. He knows the virus's leverage, and he pushes for stability because one wrong move could wipe out what remains of the Viltrumites. Then, Mark becomes infected, and Thragg brings him into Viltrumite quarantine. During testing, a scientist makes a discovery that changes everything. Mark is actually the lost grandson of Lord Argal. That gives Mark's bloodline a legitimate claim to the Empire, and it turns Thragg's rule into something far more fragile. Thragg kills the scientist immediately, with no hesitation, because he can't afford for that information to spread. The Empire is already hanging by a thread, so a public claim to the throne could split the already weakened society in half. From there, Thragg becomes more openly aggressive, trying to remove the problem before it grows. He attempts to kill Mark before the truth can fully take hold, but interference from outside forces disrupt the plan. His physical dominance doesn't change, but the real danger now is political. The secret doesn't stay buried. Eventually, Thragg confronts Nolan and reveals the truth in anger, claiming Nolan is Argal's son. Thragg expects that to restore his advantage, because he assumes Nolan has changed too much to represent what Viltrum respects. Instead, it becomes the moment Thragg starts losing his grip on his own people. Viltrumites like Craig, Anissa, Lucan, and Thula turn against him. They refuse the idea that strength alone decides legitimacy. They bow to Argal's true bloodline, and Thragg is overpowered by the very warriors he once commanded. Once finally subdued, Thragg isn't executed. Nolan chooses mercy over displays of brute strength and sends Thragg into exile instead. What nobody could have expected is that this decision creates the most dangerous version of Thragg. Exile doesn't soften him, it removes his limits. Thragg takes control of Thraxa and begins building a new army by impregnating Thraxan women, creating hybrids that will grow into fighters fiercely loyal to him. It's a ruthless attempt to rebuild power through sheer numbers before anyone can stop him. The coalition responds, and the assassin chosen is Battlebeast. The result is one of the most brutal confrontations in the entire story up to this point. Thragg and Battlebeast fight as pure warriors, both defined by strength and willing to die for their causes. The battle stretches for days, turning into a test of endurance as much as power. Thragg is injured badly by Battlebeast's reinforcements, who arrived early and was even disemboweled, so Battlebeast injures himself and kills his allies to keep the contest equal. In the end, after days of warfare, Thragg kills Battlebeast and crushes his heart. He himself barely survives, and when he recovers, he takes Battlebeast's hide and wears it with the Viltrum symbol. It's a statement to everyone watching from a distance. He's still standing, and he wants the universe to remember who the strongest really is. After that, Thragg stays active, avoiding detection while raising his growing army. During a 5-year period where Mark is in a coma, Thragg rebuilds strength in a different form through numbers, obedience, and fear. His children reach adolescence and become soldiers. He sends Ursal into action, targets key places, and enforces discipline rather than love. Even with his own children, his leadership stays cold and absolute. If they fight, he shuts it down, like a commander correcting troops. If enemies appear, he kills in front of them to teach the lesson he believes matters most. Survival is everything. That leads into the story's deepest tragedy. Oliver acts as a double agent and tries to meet Thragg, but Thragg uses the situation to track Mark. When the moment comes, Thragg chooses cruelty as a message. He grabs Mark's daughter Tara and forces the conflict into the most painful place possible. Oliver tries to save her, and Thragg kills him in front of Tara. It's a punishment meant to break Mark. Mark retaliates by taking Thragg's son Onayan hostage and killing him. Thragg then responds with overwhelming force, tearing Mark in half. Ursul appears to kill Adam Eve and leaves Tara behind defenseless. At that moment, Thragg looks unstoppable, not only in strength, but in emotional hardness. Even losing his own child doesn't slow him down. He turns grief into fuel and keeps the war going without missing a beat. As the story nears its end, cracks start to show. Ursul grieves for Onan, and Thragg tries, in his own way, to address it. It doesn't redeem him, but it shows something important. He is capable of feeling attachment, but every attachment stays locked inside the greater mission he believes he's alive for. He keeps conquering, keeps killing, and keeps preparing for the final confrontation. When his children are sent against Mark, many die quickly because Mark is simply too powerful by this point. Thragg demands sacrifice, regardless of the odds his people have against Mark. When Ursul confronts him, he grabs her by the throat and makes his belief clear. No sacrifice is too great, and anyone too weak to survive was never worthy. It's the Viltrumite creed at its harshest, aimed even at his own family. The final battle becomes the collapse of everything Thragg built. Nolan faces him again, and Thragg breaks him down with brutal precision, tearing out his heart and leaving him for dead. Mark charges in furious, and Thragg treats him as a real threat, but he still throws his remaining children at Mark like weapons. They die on impact because Mark's now unstoppable, and Thragg doesn't care in the slightest. It's horrifying, and it shows what Thragg has become. He's willing to destroy the army of children he created if it gets him closer to victory. Mark finally forces the fight to the one place Thragg can't control. He drags Thragg into the sun, pushing the battle into heat so intense their bodies begin burning apart. In the middle of it, Thragg reveals what's driving him at the deepest level, a deep craving for revenge and deep-seated entitlement. He believes Mark's bloodline stole the Empire from him and believes he deserved to rule. Mark refuses to let him escape and pulls him deeper into the sun until flesh burns away and only endurance remains. Robot's armor buys Mark a few more moments, but it melts under the sun's force. Thragg fights with raw rage, snapping both of Mark's arms, still trying to force the win through pain and aggression, and then it ends in a brutal reversal. Mark, even with broken arms, kills Thragg by ripping his throat out with his teeth. Thragg dies not through a clean finishing blow, but through pure refusal to give up, leading to savage actions. Mark is close to dying too, but Alan arrives in time and carries him away, leaving Thragg's body to be consumed by the sun. With Thragg gone, the Viltrumites finally have the chance to become something else. His rule was built on fear, purity, and conquest, and it nearly drove his people into extinction. His defeat closes the door on the old empire, the version that believed only strength mattered and everyone else existed to be crushed. A new dawn is ushered in, one with hope, and one where love triumphs over mindless war and power struggles. So that's the full story of Thragg. What do you think? Is he really one of the strongest threats, or was his life just a failed series of anger management classes? Let us know what you think in the comments. Leave the video a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe for more awesome Invincible content.